simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
Two, check. We got robbed of the TTS on that one. I also sentence the reactionaries and fascists to the Lulag. Get in there. Get in that Lulag. Thank you, Dimitri, for the 100 friend coin. Thank you also to Slightly Tethered for the 14 months of Tier 1. Thank you, Slightly Tethered. Hello, Marina. Hello, John, Moss World, HDA, Montreal Munchies, DRP, Marty, Praxid, Sinchal, James, Igloo, Mustache Imperial. The gang's all here. The gang, yo, everyone's getting a shout out. Everyone's getting a shout out today. Hello. Perfect Speller. Comrade Metzia.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk
Relic.
through all this.
Netlocked.
TRRS Sankara.
Thank you, Bon Bon, for the 16 months Tier 1. Thank you. Shoutouts to all who want it. Johnny. Johnny watching the stream while driving yet again. Yeah, Netlocked. I really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed The Last of Us season premiere. Amazing how faithful it was to the game. It was almost like uncanny at some points. And the first thing that happens in the first act of the show really hits me hard. It's been like 10 years since this fucking game came out, and that moment gets me every single time. It gets me every single time, no matter how many times I've seen it. No matter how many times I've seen it, it gets me every fucking time. Pascal absolutely works. I was watching it with my partner last night, like, I loved Troy Baker's performance as Joel in the original games. And I didn't know if I was going to be able to like see any other actor as Joel, but it's amazing how much Pedro Pascal like is Joel. Like there's moments even just when taking shots of him where it's just like, oh my goodness, it's crazy. Love Pedro Pascal. So Outrun, am I supposed to have gotten a hat? You asked me if I got a hat. I didn't see anything this morning. Do we got a hat en route? What's going on? Should I go check?
This is some guy, Rob Russo, some leftist based in Canada. I was turned on to this sick individual, and I found this.
Plain Talk John, hello, thank you for the raid. Welcome. Welcome, Plain Talk John Raiders. Get in here, Raiders. Thank you, Plain Talk John. Please smash the follow button. I am Rob. I'm a socialist Twitch streamer here in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Take care of them. They can be pretty wild. That's okay. I can wrangle the wild chatters with the best of them, John. Thank you. I want to talk about milk. You know, some people don't want to admit this, but sometimes a nice tall glass of ice cold milk is nice. It's satisfying. It's a satisfying drink as accompaniment to dinner sometimes. I enjoy it, and there's nothing wrong with that. Milk on its own or milk with a treat. Ice cold milk with a PB sandwich. That's just tremendous. Tremendous stuff. Milk on its own or milk with a treat, for sure. Any kind of peanut buttery thing, chocolatey thing, love it. So do I have a hat on the way? Is this what I understand? Should have a Clueless 2 coming. It was crazy because it's only been like 18 months. You know, thank you and everything. I appreciate the gesture. obviously, the timeline. Let's just say I think there was a lot of times that hat making could have been going on and wasn't. Why was that? Why was that the case? I don't know. I can't answer that. I'm not sure. The important thing is that the hat is coming. The important thing is that the hat is coming now. You know? That's all that matters, really. Who really cares if it took 18 months to get this hat? It's not like I'm counting. It's not like I was ever thinking about this. And that I was ever just sitting at home thinking about how fucking annoying it was to not have it. I never did that. And I'm not going to do it today. Thank you to Clueless for the hat. I'm wondering if I should go check. Should I go check to see if there's mail and see if I got a hat here? I'm very appreciative. Thank you, Clueless, for the hat. I'm genuinely very thankful. I'm just yanking your chain. Just yanking your chain over here. I'm playing this fictional character that I inhabit sometimes, where I pretend to be this jerk, you know, this mean jerk, which obviously is not a reflection of my true personality. Just a kind of a bit or a character that I'm doing. Heel Rob, that's right. The classic character that everyone enjoys. The classic character. So this is going to be tricky to eat on camera, but I didn't have much to eat. I didn't have any sandwich stuff. I did have one of these bad boys though. The feather boa cutting a promo on the toque knitting techniques for sure. Yeah, I do have one of these guys. I put an egg in there. I was like, you know, let's get crazy here. I put the toppings into the ramen and I just threw an egg in there and then poured all the boiling water. I'm not so sure it's doing the best job at actually cooking properly though. Clueless bought me that exact thing. There you go. There you go. I'm wondering if I should maybe throw in a little bit more water on top there. Cup of nudes to the rescue with low on supplies. That's right. I don't know about this egg idea. I think I was maybe getting a little bit... I was getting maybe a little bit ambitious with this. First of all, just as a... Oh, hi, comrade, social distancing as well. Also a Rob character. That's right. You've got Heel Rob and you've got Trustworthy Rob. The two sides to the coin. Eventually they all inhabit the same body like Gollum. No, it was just a dropped egg. I was counting on the boiling water to just like cook the egg and the steam and everything. I'm not so sure about it though. I'm gonna put in a little bit more water. One sec. Just one moment. Just one moment. I think with just a little bit more water, it's going to be fine. If you can hear the promo, Clueless is cutting on you fucking that egg up. It's going to be fine. It's mostly cooked. I'm just going to add a little bit more boiling water. And we're going to be good to go. We are going to be good to go. Okay? Show me, no problem. One moment. All right, that's going to be fine. That's going to be fine. We're good. We're good to go. Okay. Lots to talk about today. We'll get to the. We're going to get to the MLK stuff. I think I've got some good content to check out to talk about MLK and MLK's legacy, the way that both liberals and conservatives try to whitewash, for lack of a better word, MLK's more revolutionary tendencies. We're going to talk about what Lenin had to say about that. Probably my favorite passage from State and Revolution, just from the first couple of pages when he talks about revolutionary figures, referring to Marx and how they get robbed of their revolutionary potential, posthumously. And it's the kind of thing that when you read it, it sounds like it was written about MLK, It sounds like if you don't know who wrote it and when, you think, oh, who's this about, MLK? That was one of the things that when I started reading it, it made me understand how contemporary Lenin is, and how it's like, it's not, you can read Lenin and you learn so many things about, our modern society, our modern culture that happened long after he died. The status quo is not that bad. That's right. MLK's famous saying. He's famous for saying this. Chin chin. It is almost like a science. That's right. It's almost like they just observe people like, Marx, Lenin. They just observed these things out, and they didn't invent these concepts. They just observed these concepts playing out and wrote them down. Wrote down these observations. Oh, we got a Diet Coke over here. That's right. Synthesis? In my dialectical materialism, it's more likely than you think. Oh boy. I am looking forward to eating these noodles. I'm pretty hungry. Here. It's going to be tricky to eat the noodles on camera, I realized. Anyway, we're going to get to this. We got the full speech. I think this is what we're going to do today. We got the full speech. Why I am opposed to the war in Vietnam. It's one of the things we've talked about a lot when it comes to MLK, or figures like MLK, which when he started, he became, he was already a target for repression. He was targeted by the FBI famously and by the U.S. government. But when I think it became crucial to ensure that this guy was no longer saying any stuff is when he started tying together the concepts of social justice with relations to black communities in America with the broader struggle against imperialism in Vietnam and with the broader struggle against capitalism, which is oppressing all people. When he started tying these things together, that's when I think it became a lot more urgent on the part of the establishment to ensure that he wasn't going to be around to make these links anymore. Is this like an undisclosed mukbang stream? It's got mukbang tendencies. It's got mukbang characteristics. It's like a socialism and anti-imperialism thing, but with a lot of conversation about snacks. And sometimes some like mukbang kind of content. It's really kind of a smorgasbord. All kinds of different stuff going on over here. Are you still hooked on Rain Energy? No, because they no longer send me free product anymore, so now they're canceled. Although I must admit that I did have a Rain yesterday. Really needed some energy. I was very tired, and I did drink a Rain white gummy bear flavor. I didn't enjoy it, though. Didn't enjoy it. I drank it, but I did not enjoy it. So yes, that's right. White gummy bear, Lana. That's right. I'm a grown adult man. I'm a 39-year-old man. I can drive around and drink my white gummy bear Rain flavor. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with it whatsoever. How was your weekend, everybody? Strictly Dreamsicle. That's a good one too. Okay, the egg is perfect now. The egg is perfect. So all your mockery and your doubting, all for naught. The egg is perfect. I really don't know about eating this on camera, though. It's really going to be tricky. I'm probably going to humiliate myself. Still a little hot. Oh, you like that tweet to Ari Flesher? Fucking Ari Flesher complaining about socialism. Oh no, there's some socialists in the New York state government. Oh my goodness, how dangerous. This man's a fucking war criminal. This man laundered and was out there spewing propaganda about a war which killed like 1 million civilians and created a massive $32 million person refugee crisis. He's out there complaining about socialism. Talking about Ari Flesher. Johnny. Oh, Clueless. Hey, I didn't see you there. Hello. I was just actually in the middle of thanking you for the amazing and very generous hat, which I believe is en route. Hugely appreciative that you would take the time to do that, to take the time to create. I mean, it's an amazing act, creating this article of clothing just out of nothing.
You can count on me.
Out of nowhere.
Good old Rob to talk you through all this.
You know? Really incredible stuff, and I'm really looking forward to getting it and trying that on. Thank you once again to Clueless. And I liked your fit the other day with the Rousseau Institute sweatshirt. I particularly like the glasses. Those are some very good glasses. But thank you for representing, and thank you for everything you do for this community, Clueless. Don't listen to any fake news about things that may or may not have been said on this stream today or any other time. There's a lot of disinformation out there. A lot of people, you got to wonder their motive. Who benefits? Who benefits from turning us against each other like this? Who benefits from people turning us against each other? I don't know. And thank you, Weenus, for gifting a sub to Clueless. People spreading anti-Rob disinformation. You hate to see it. Very, very unfortunate.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old
man, the egg
Rob
is so
to
perfect.
talk you through all this.
I actually finished your hat over a year ago. I just had to secure a Canadian boyfriend to mail it for me. Fair enough. Fair enough. Look at the egg is perfect. Look at this. Look at this. You doubted me. You all doubted me. Look at that gooey egg. You all doubted me. Thank you, James, for gifting a sub. Thank you. Thank you, folks. It's not raw. This is great stuff. This was a good choice. Definitely a cooked egg, absolutely. Is Luminous of Lore a reference to Data's brother Lore from Star Trek? I watched an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation last night. A good one. The one where Beverly, she's hanging out with her like old retired colleague, and he was saying something about how you get older and then all your friends kind of start to disappear, and then she gets trapped in this like warp bubble because yet another one of Wesley's experiments goes haywire, and she gets trapped in a warp bubble and then creates this alternate reality where everyone on the ship starts going missing, and no one believes her. No one has any recollection of all these missing people. Great episode. Yeah, come on, Wesley. Wesley's experiments also save the ship sometimes. It seems more often than not. More often than not, the Wesley experiment track record is to put the ship in danger. Sometimes he's able to like undo his fuck up. But like more often, I feel like in terms of batting average, more often than not, these experiments are just like wreaking havoc on the ship in the first place. That seems to be the consistency. He's a loose cannon. Yeah, he did end up killing one of his classmates at the academy, trying to the stunt. Tried that banned stunt shuttle maneuver. Got their friend killed and then tried to cover it up. That's actually a brutal episode then, because Picard gives him a stern lecture at one point, and it's like, you know how much stock he puts into Picard, respecting him and believing in him, and he gets that stern lecture from Picard when Picard knows he's lying, and it's like, oof. Oof. That is brutal. He's not that. He's just disappointed. That's right. Awful. So someone can tell me what Data's brother Lore is. Well, Data has like an identical twin brother named Lore, who was created first, who has emotions. He has like more human emotions. The thing that Data is always trying to figure out. But feels too much. Exactly. And was shut down. Was shut down by his creator, Dr. Noonien Soong, because he's evil and he was clashing with these colonists. But then eventually gets revived and becomes a constant, like, a recurring character on the show. Just like me, for real. Picard got into a fight at the academy where he was stabbed in the heart. No saint. Well, the thing is, he wasn't doing anything wrong. He was just playing, just because he was like messing around with some Nausicaans at the bar after playing some whatever game or whatever, and being maybe a bit of an arrogant prick. That's not illegal. It's not illegal, and it's not against Starfleet regulations to be an arrogant little hotshot when you're playing the Nausicaans. He's just French, that's right. Yeah, and the lore sold out the entire colony to the crystalline entity. That's right. There's nothing wrong with just, talking shit with the Nausicaans at the academy. I mean, there's nothing that says you can't do that. And he just gets stabbed from behind. This cowardly Nausicaan stabs him from behind. One of the best Star Trek plotlines is how much Sisko hates Picard. That DS9 pilot is so fucking great. Oh my god. This is really good. Like, I have gotten these in like the package before, but I've never gotten this cup, and it's fucking good. It's very flavorful, very spicy. My egg really improved it a lot. This is really good. When DS9 gets going, it far surpasses TNG. Yeah, I think I'll always just be a TNG guy because I so relate it to my childhood, and because like I genuinely learned a lot about like morality from Picard. I didn't go to church. Picard was more my religious upbringing in terms of giving that kind of moral framework. So I'll always just like, feel something for TNG for that reason. The best parts of DS9 though are up there with absolutely anything else that happened in Trek for sure. The Enterprise was your church and Picard was your Jesus. That's right. Oh, Johnny, you've never watched it? Wow. You really got to watch DS9. There's probably like a way to get through the first, because the DS9 is pretty shaky at first, but it gets so good. There's probably a way to just like watch a couple of episodes. I'm sure Lodane or someone has outlined a like watch through plan. I've only seen the random TNG episode when I was young and occasionally dropping in on Clueless's rewatch. There's some fucking tremendous episodes. There's that great episode another good Beverly episode actually, when she gets kidnapped by that like charismatic terrorist guy in this kind of like Palestinian versus IDF kind of conflict. And he says some incredibly true and based things about like human history. Yeah, the hot terrorist. That's right. Finn. And Beverly starts lecturing him about violence. And he's like, are you fucking kidding me? Where are you from again? Earth? Oh yeah. You're going to lecture me about violence? Shut the hell up. Yeah, I kill people. That guy's so cool. Roll Aaron did nothing wrong. Man. Oh, that was really good. That was really, really good, those noodles. Followed by the nice ice cold Diet Coke. Now I'm ready to go. Now I'm ready to go here. Hello, Carrier Wave. Hello. What's up? What is that? Do you know, hey, Carrier Wave, do you know when I can expect this aforementioned hat?
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you
What's
through
going on
all
with this hat situation? Hey, Carrier Wave, thank you for the 23 months of tier 2 resub. So close to the highly elite, highly exclusive TRRS 2-year sub badge. Very exciting. Not a P badge. Golden badge. Thank you, Venus. Deanna Troy got done dirty as a character. I feel for Marina Sirtis. For sure, she didn't really have a whole lot to do. I'm hard pressed to think of any really compelling Troy episodes. I did like Troy toward the end of the series when there's that great episode Chain of Command, the famous episode with Picard being tortured by that Cardassian guy, and Admiral Captain Jellicoe takes over the Enterprise, and he makes Troy. He's like, "Why are you wearing this like cat suit? Like, wear an actual uniform." And she's kind of like, "Huh, like maybe I should do that." She starts being taken a bit more seriously as a character after that, which is actually pretty cool. Hello, Valkyrie. What's up? Just a quick double check. There are 3 lights, yeah? Fake news. Fake news.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Venus, for the gifted sub. I'm wondering should I go check for this hat? I could do a live hat unboxing. Should I go check that out? What do we say? I don't really want to go all the way. I have to go down the stairs. Okay. Okay, I'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere, okay? I'll be right back. No hat. No hat, folks. The thing that stuck with me the most about the TNG torture episode wasn't the four lights, it was how when Picard was resting between tortures, this tiny little Cardassian girl comes inside the chamber to visit her dad, the master torturer. At his work, she's totally used to seeing the victims in here. Just a incredible performance, but I think it was David Warner. Is a character actor David Warner. I believe. Yes. Character actor David Warner. Who was also in Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, which is one of the best Star Trek movies. Just what a fucking amazing! Just those two heavyweights, Patrick Stewart and David Warner, one opposite one another in that episode, is just so fucking great. It's so great. Hey Husker, how's it going? Hey, encouraging people. Yeah, great episode.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Comrade Social Distancing. For the gifted sub. Thank you. In spite of all you have done to me, I find you a pitiable man. Those episodes where Picard is vulnerable are always great, right? Because he's got such an unflappable exterior. When you see that crack, it's always very... It's scary, right? That like the episode Family, right? After the whole Borg incident, he's kind of recovering. He's hanging out with his brother, and his brother knows. Yeah, that's right. That's right, Sean. That's right. And his brother knows, and his brother's constantly needling at him the whole episode because he knows that it needs to come out. And when it does, it's so horrible. Oh God, it's so bad when they're all muddy. They're all from wrestling in the mud, in the vines. Ugh, it's brutal. I'm getting emotional just thinking about it. You think a lot of it is Rick Berman? It's crazy how like a lot of the main people that came in to shepherd the franchise were so antithetical to like everything that it was supposed to be about. Like, who's the guy that fucking wrote? Yeah, Orci and Kurtzman took over for the movies and just didn't... Those new movies like Star Trek Into Darkness and just did not get at all what Star Trek is about. He also treated the woman on staff like shit. Yeah, it's not surprising. Not surprising at all. Then yeah, the movies are so bad. I think the original reboot was okay, even though I was never happy about redoing the old cast. You know, the cast with the actors were so great. The casting was good, but I didn't want to see young Kirk. I just wanted to see something else, you know? What if we do Star Trek, but instead of progress, we do nihilism? Yeah. What if we do like a deep state conspiracy 9/11 allegory? And J.J. Abrams was just a terrible choice for Star Trek. I love Star Trek 4 Voyage Home, but probably for whale reasons and nostalgia. Not at all. I think quite possibly the Voyage Home is the best Star Trek movie. I think it's the one that feels the most like Star Trek, and it caps off that little trilogy within the the series of Wrath of Khan, Search for Spock, Voyage Home. And it's so great. I love it. I love Voyage Home. And it's funny, too. It's really funny. I did watch some of Strange New Worlds, and I enjoyed it. I haven't watched the whole thing. I like Voyage Home, but my favorite is Khan with the submarine fight at the Nebula. I mean, that is just incredible shit. There's no getting around that. No, J.J. Abrams doesn't get Star Trek. Robin Surgeons was great this week. Thank you, Transflexual. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed. I'm gonna pry my gas over my burnt crisp hands. Get your shit lens flares out of my face, JJ. I admit, though, I did like Force Awakens. I must admit. Just as a building block to a new franchise, I thought it did a good job. And if only they'd been able to capitalize on that. Which they did not do. These apples are really growing on me. They did Finn very dirty. Absolutely. Let's do some more Last Jedi debates. Absolutely. We're not done. I just rewatched all of Alias last year. It's a bit silly, but still enjoyable. I think that's the only JJ I like. I don't think I ever finished Alias, but I really liked the first 2 seasons of Alias. I think season 2 of Alias ends with this fucking amazing fight with Jennifer Garner and who we thought was her best friend, the person posing as her best friend. And when all that drama finally kind of all that conflict comes to a head and they get in that incredible fight at the end of season 2, it's one of my favorite like action fight moments, in any TV or film or anything. And I do enjoy Mission Impossible 3 as well. I like Mission Impossible 3 with Philip Seymour Hoffman. MI2 is weird. I haven't seen that in a long time. But I love John Woo, but it's just such a weird fit. It's a weird mix. It's like kind of an interesting mess, MI2. This turned out to be a pretty solid little lunch here, folks. I did not have high hopes for this lunch situation today. I feel pretty satisfied, though, right now. I'm feeling good. So, and we're almost an hour in. Are we finished with pop culture movie chat? What should we do here? Should we get down to brass tacks? Excuse me. After you thoroughly ate that apple, I'm ready for some brass taxes. Excellent. I'm just gonna grab my phone quickly in the other room because I think I had another tweet that I wanted to look at that was on there. I just wanted to go grab that. 1 sec. And I'm ready to go. I do need an assistant. That's right. Absolutely right. Once we have the friendship compound, one of you lucky chatters can be the lucky one to go get me my snacks and my beverages and my phone and whatever else. My mail. One of you lucky chatters can do this. I know you've all been clamoring. You've been clamoring for such an opportunity. That's right. The tier 3 sub gets you that coveted house elf position. So let's see what we got here. What do we got? My new catchphrase. What do we got?
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Oh no, the unluckiest sub month.
Oh shit. Who's this? GG Allen Dulles, thank you for the 13 months, tier 1. Yeah, we got to get you out of this one quick. Get you out of this month quick. Unpaid internship. You can't put a value on that kind of experience. That's right. You put that on your resume. It's about networking, okay? You're making connections in the biz, the industry. That's the most important thing. I mean, we could start off looking at this. This is kind of a funny icebreaker, this tweet from Ben Shapiro. The cool kids philosopher, as he's known in the prestigious New York Times newspaper, the cool kids philosopher, Ben Shapiro, says every MLK day we're treated to a bevy of think pieces on how the only way to achieve MLK's dream is to embrace the group redistributionism and racial discrimination. MLK may have made such arguments in 1968, but that simply isn't the dream or the pathway we celebrate him for. Yeah, guess what, Ben? No shit. We know that that's not why you celebrate him, Ben. We know why conservatives don't celebrate him for wanting to wanting to have a redistributive economic system, or being a radical activist for for social justice or racial justice. We know that you don't celebrate that. Ben Shapiro, who has tweets like making fun of Trayvon Martin for getting murdered. You literally celebrate the murder of black teenagers This fucking racist. We know that's not what you say. We know that's not the way that Ben Shapiro or other conservatives celebrate this man, and pretend that the only contribution that MLK ever made was suggesting that he wanted everyone to be equal, and that's all that he ever thought about. He didn't want to have any special privileges for black people, don't you know? That was his whole dream. Remember that? I have a dream. He was really against anti-white racism, really, when you think about it. When you think about it, that was one of his main things. He said Arabs, then Palestinians, prefer to live in sewage. For sure, yeah. They're just like... They just deserve to be just bombed and live in sewage. That's the only thing they understand.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
This will also make this racist frightened.
Oh, thanks, Dimitri, for the 200 friend coin.
Incomplete. Jiva said, our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of Palestine. Therefore, we stand together to fight for the liberation of Palestine.
The grandson of
Free,
Mandela.
free Palestine! Free, free Palestine!
Sick. That's amazing. Hey, Sean, thank you for the gifted sub. Thank you. Thank you for the gifted sub. I wanted to talk about this. This MLK memorial statue in Washington, D.C. And like I would want to know, like what black people think about this. I don't want to, it's not about me or whatever. I think it's almost an insult. It's a beautiful monument. It's a beautiful monument and it's a beautiful gesture. But I think it's almost insulting the way that the United States government, after making this man like public enemy number one, when he was alive, ruthlessly like trying to destroy this man at every opportunity, most likely, we all understand, being directly involved or implicated in his assassination. Oh no, that was just some lone gun nut. Yeah, it's always just some lone gun nut, isn't it? It's always some lone nut. And then for the U.S. to put up this monument, and again, it's a beautiful monument. And if there's people in America or elsewhere that get something out of going to visit this monument, that's wonderful. And I wouldn't want to take anything away from that. But I do think it's almost insulting how the U.S. government uses MLK's image and builds this monument and suggests in any way that they've learned from or have tried to apply his values in any way. I mean, that's sick. I think this is a monument that really is there to whitewash the ongoing crimes of the government that MLK himself was against every day of his life, every day of his professional life, and it's a way to whitewash those crimes and suggest that they've learned from this past or that they've moved on from this era of, racial discrimination, or that they've embraced social justice, or that there's been any effort whatsoever to reckon with this like horrific past, this original sin. Yeah, the FBI tweeting about MLK. Yeah, that's great. The picture of the Boston guy really kind of says it all, doesn't it? So you know what I mean? I hope no one that's watching that thinks, like I would say, it's a beautiful monument. If there's anyone that gets something out of visiting this monument, and I think that's wonderful, but I think it is, in a way, it's insulting to MLK's legacy that the U.S. puts up these kinds of monuments or suggests in any way that they've learned from his teachings, his speeches, the things that he was passionate about. Since the late 60s, the kind of things that the United States government has done, both abroad, in the name of pursuing this like global capitalist hegemony, to poor and racialized people all over the world, in Southeast Asia and Latin America, in Africa, to what they've done in black communities since MLK's death. The vast expansion of the prison system, the war on drugs, which deliberately targeted these communities and destroyed communities, in black communities in the United States. The CIA literally pumped crack cocaine into inner city black communities and used drugs as an excuse to militarily occupy these communities. And just routinely, regularly, as we've talked about endlessly, execute predominantly or proportionally greater proportionality of black Americans, shooting them in the street dead every single day. You know? It's really sickening. I know I've done this before. But I always really do, when it comes to MLK, really when I read this passage for the first time, I thought it was about MLK. He really comes out of the gate swinging on this one. So here's Lenin. What is now happening to Marxist theory has, in the course of history, happened repeatedly to the theories of revolutionary thinkers and leaders of oppressed classes fighting for emancipation. During the lifetimes of great revolutionaries, the oppressing classes constantly hounded them, received their theories with the most savage malice, the most furious hatred, and the most unscrupulous campaigns of lies and slander. After their death, attempts are made to convert them into harmless icons, to canonize them, so to say, and to hallow their names to a certain extent for the consolation of the oppressed classes, and with the object of duping the latter, while at the same time robbing the revolutionary theory of its substance, blunting its revolutionary edge, and vulgarizing it. Today, the bourgeoisie and the opportunists within the labor movement concur in this doctrine of Marxism. They omit, obscure, or distort the revolutionary side of its theory, its revolutionary soul. They push to the foreground and extol what is or seems acceptable to the bourgeoisie. All the social chauvinists are now Marxists. Don't laugh. Don't laugh. And more frequently, German bourgeois scholars, only yesterday specialists in the annihilation of Marxism, are speaking of the national German Marx, who they claim educated the labor unions, which are so splendidly organized for the purpose of waging a predatory war. Obviously, the stuff about Marx is about Marx, but that segment, that passage about revolutionary figures, I mean, it's just like clockwork. And that is what happened with MLK's legacy. You know, he's been totally whitewashed and turned into this kind of like harmless American icon who, like we were saying, basically whose main message was all lives matter. That's basically the takeaway from the American political class who canonized him and lionized him and put up the statue.
To talk you through all this.
Thank you very much for the gifted sub, comment on social distancing. It's interesting that he uses the term canonized because the presence of Christian moralism in Western Marxist tradition is like a problem we've never dealt with. It's actually something that I believe Dimitri sent to me the other day, that piece, Western Marxism loves purity and martyrdom, but not real revolution. Very interesting, going along with some of the stuff that I was saying the other day about how we can't envision actually a world where we win and we fetishize losing. And we criticize people that do what it takes to win around the world. And part of that is because of this kind of like intrinsic Christian morality that we've all unconsciously taken on board. Kwame Ture talks about how the best speech from MLK is not "I have a dream," but rather his speech on Vietnam. Yeah, and we're going to be listening to that today, Valkyrie. Thanks for bringing that up. That's exactly right. And Kwame Ture is such an interesting example as well, right? Because you see Bill Clinton at John Lewis's funeral. This fucking pig, Bill Clinton, talked about how after the civil rights movement, the movement could have gone in the John Lewis direction, or it could have gone in the Stokely Carmichael direction. And he kind of says it in this condescending, chuckling way. Thank goodness it didn't. But it is true, because you see how Kwame Ture was marginalized and kind of like removed from his contributions to that movement were removed, and it all got turned into work within the system, elect Democrats, you know, and this very limited version of like what progress means or what social justice means, which is happening in the context of the pre-existing system, upholding all these very same institutions and structures, and just working within the Democratic Party to maybe make some mild tweaks around the edges. And just as we've talked about before, this came up the other day, and we should come up again, just the fact of how the Democratic Party exists as a way to kind of take that kind of any kind of movement towards social justice and dilute it and snuff it out. And the way that, you know, after the George Floyd protests, the biggest, largest uprisings in modern history, how that resulted in Nancy Pelosi kneeling in kente cloth and vastly more sums of money going to police. You know, that's where they want that revolutionary potential going, into that direction. Working within the Democratic Party so it can be snuffed out and destroyed. And they don't want it going in the radical direction, the Kwame Ture direction, which really, I believe, frankly, was the direction that MLK was going at the time of his death. Very incremental change you can believe in eventually. That's right. Yeah, then exactly that it goes in that direction, and then you elect a black president. You elect a black president in 2008, and it's under this historic black president that he bombs hospitals and weddings in the Middle East. He continues to militarize these police departments, these racist police departments around the country. Oversees, you know, these militarized police, busting up social and racial justice protests, busting up indigenous protests against pipeline infrastructure. You know, then you get a historic black president that's overseeing all these things. You know, that's where they want this revolutionary potential to go. Not in the Kwame Ture direction of actually criticizing the systems and structures and institutions that cause these massive disparities and this massive injustice. That one. So let's look at that speech today. And again, I talked about how as much as people in like the elites, the establishment would like to pretend that MLK as a figure really just cared about having everyone be the same. And, you know, support is like an all lives matter guy. So where he was like really against white cops being judged for their whiteness when they, you know, murder black people.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
To add support to that article one sent you, Kwame Ture has a speech where he reminds people that MLK mixed nonviolence as a principle instead of a tactic because he was a Christian theologian, a reflection that portrays us as well.
That's interesting, Dimitri. Thank you. So this was, like as Kwame Ture said, this was the speech that we should be paying attention to when it comes to MLK. Is his speech, why I'm opposed to the war in Vietnam. And like I was saying, when he started to link the struggle for social and racial justice in the United States with a broader struggle for economic justice domestically and the broader struggle against American imperialism in Southeast Asia and elsewhere, that's when I think he became dangerous. He was troubling, he was problematic to the establishment. Prior to that, that's when he became actively dangerous. And it just, like, before we start too, it just speaks to something else I was talking about the other day, this idea about like purges, or like is America democracy? Is America authoritarian? It's not authoritarian. I'm a white person. I grew up in the suburbs. I had every freedom and responsibility. I'm able to go and criticize the government here on Twitch. Of course it's a democracy. Of course it's not authoritarian. And the only time these purges ever were carried out was under Stalin, under the Soviet Union. when, like, again, we've had the U.S. government just literally carrying out purges in these communities. You know, the assassination of MLK, the assassination of Malcolm X, the assassination of Fred Hampton and the rest of the Black Panthers that were persecuted. Like I said, the war on drugs, which is a political decision in order to militarize police presences in black communities and send black people by the millions into prison, to destroy these communities, to pump them full of drugs. I mean, and we still think that that America is some like free society where there's some kind of justice or freedom to criticize the government or any of that shit. That's what I think about a lot too. It's, it's like they saw these revolutionary figures starting to pop up in the 60s with Malcolm X, with MLK, with Fred Hampton. And then I think the goal after they were all assassinated was to ensure that the next, no one ever hears about the next MLK. No one hears about the next Fred Hampton. No one hears about the next Malcolm X. Like how many MLKs do you think got sent to prison when they were 19 years old for crack cocaine or for drug dealing, or weed or whatever? How many MLKs or Malcolm X's or Fred Hampton just died in senseless gang violence after, the CIA pumped drugs into these communities and empowered this very kind of like violence, How many MLKs or Malcolm X's or Fred Hamptons just ended up in burned out cars? At the beginning of the George Floyd protests, there was all kinds of activists that were starting to make names for themselves in the black community. How many of them just ended up dying mysteriously under mysterious circumstances, or just murdered by a cop with zero excuse needed? For sure, shot in the street because a cop said, "Well, I thought he had a gun," when he had his car keys or a candy bar in his hand or something. And then we talk about socialist countries like they've engaged in violence. Oh no, or purges. Or we can only ever use nonviolence, It's sickening. So then, we talk about, oh no, you can never support, if you're a socialist, you can never support these governments that carried out these kind of purges. When it's just like, these are the tactics that we see from the power structures that we're trying to overthrow, that we're trying to subvert.
Talking through all this.
Hello there.
Ainsley, thank you very much for the 7 months tier 1. Hello there to you. Hello there. And then the BLM national leadership got replaced by Democrat NGO people. And again, no one seems to give a shit. It is weird, isn't it? It is very weird. During the Floyd protest, cops were caught on camera vandalizing businesses and absolutely nothing happened. I mean, cops night after night escalated those peaceful protests into riots. Those were peaceful protests where each and every night these militarized with cops come in and inevitably escalate them into riots. And then you have white moderate liberals and others wagging their finger at the violence. Well, why are you're just hurting our message. You're putting in jeopardy. You're putting the Democrat electoral chances in jeopardy. Don't you know who's on your team? Don't you know who's on your side? Why are you burning down these communities? Don't even talk about defunding the police now. Don't even say it. It's scaring all the middle Americans. Stop that. Stop doing that. And they're still lecturing. And police today in America are killing more people than previously. Right? No reform, no justice. Yeah, George Floyd's specific killer went to prison. Fucking congratulations. They opened up an investigation into Breonna Taylor's killing. Fucking congratulations. Meanwhile, police departments around the country, billions of more dollars, more black people being murdered in the street than there ever was previously. No systemic changes, nothing at all. I personally think middle Americans aren't scared enough. Seriously. The context of the purges was they were teetering on another civil war, having just been invaded by more than a dozen nations, and now Germany was planning on liquidating their entire population to make them slaves. Where is this sort of context for the U.S. that minorities don't want to live in abject poverty or be extrajudicially murdered? For sure, Johnny. Absolutely. You're not allowed to do anything, especially nothing violent, in order to preserve your political project. Even when you're under attack, you're under assault, you're under siege from moment one. Anyway, let's listen to MLK's speech, Why I Am Opposed to the War in Vietnam. As I was saying when I was setting the table on this is kind of around the time when he's connecting the struggle for social and racial justice with the struggle against imperialism in Southeast Asia and elsewhere, when he's connecting the struggle for social justice to the struggle for economic justice, from everyone being under the heel of the capitalist system. That's when he became actively dangerous to the establishment. Those cops that murdered that black person in LA weeks ago just for flagging them down, an English teacher who flagged them down after an accident and then gets tased to death in the fucking street, while begging for his life yet again. And you know what? It's not surprising that there's not big protests starting up again. You know, sometimes I'm thinking like, what's going to be the next spark that starts that next big wave of protests? But it's like, what possible reason would people have to put their lives and their livelihoods on the line when they know beyond a shadow of a doubt that no one is coming to help them? That all their protesting and all their struggle will just mean nothing. That's why that was how important it was to the establishment to ensure that was the outcome with those protests, that nothing could be gained. It has to be all loss, all punishment. Yeah, people are demoralized as fuck, and they very correctly, like, completely understandable. Socializing people to defend the cops and play devil's advocate for them is really paying off. Yeah, it's like now you have all these, like, I did a tweet about this last night, but you have all these people like deputizing themselves to fight back against shoplifters against these massive corporate conglomerate grocery chains. That's how much you fetishize the cops and law and order and this kind of bullshit. You want to know what this war on drugs is really all about? The Nixon campaign in '68 and the Nixon White House after that had two enemies, the anti-war left and black people. You understand what I'm saying? We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. We could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. Do we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did, says John Ehrlichman, assistant to the president of domestic affairs under President Richard Nixon. And this is the kind of thing that they admit years later, but then we're supposed to be pretending that same thing is not going on today, right? Sure, when they release the documents 30 years from now that show how they were targeting all these BLM protest leaders and movement leaders and for targeted assassinations, when they admit that 30 years from now, we're going to say, oh, wow, that's so terrible. I can't believe that was happening 30 years ago. While
you can count on me
pretending that very same activity is not happening
through all this
currently. Rinse and repeat. Thank you so much, Comrade Social Distancing, for another gifted sub to Valkyrie. Thank you. Anyway, let's I've set the table enough for this speech. Let's watch MLK's speech, Why I'm Opposed to the War in Vietnam. Here we go.
The sermon which I am preaching this morning, in a sense, is not the usual kind of sermon, but it is a sermon and an important subject nevertheless, because the issue that I will be discussing today is one of the most controversial issues confronting our nation. I'm using as a subject from which to preach why I am opposed to the war in Vietnam. Now let me make it clear in the beginning
Reading 1776, The Counter-Revolution by Gerald Horne, I think proves that the ruling class is still just as frightened today as they were 3 centuries ago. They're frightened that the slaves will rise up and do to them what they've done to others. Absolutely. I got to get Gerald Horne on the show. That's one goal for this year, Johnny. And I know Dimitri is big on Gerald Horne as well. I'm really going to try and do that.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the
I
account.
see this
Yes,
war
you do.
as
Thank you so much, Dimitri. I'll
an
do it.
unjust,
I will do it, I promise. This is my pledge to
evil
you.
and futile war. And I preach to you today on the war in Vietnam because my conscience leaves me with no other choice. The time has come for America to hear the truth about this tragic war. In international conflicts, the truth is hard to come by because most nations are deceived about themselves. Hard to come. Rationalizations and the incessant search for scapegoats are the psychological cataracts that blind us to our sins. But the day has passed for superficial patriotism. He who lives with untruth lives in spiritual slavery. Freedom is still the bonus we receive for knowing the truth. Ye shall know the truth, says Jesus, and the truth shall set you free.
Now I'm ready to go.
Now, I've chosen to preach about the war in Vietnam today because I agree with Dante that the hottest places in hell are reserved for those who, in a period of moral crisis, maintain their neutrality. There comes a time when silence is betrayal. The truth of these words is beyond doubt, but the mission to which they call us is a most difficult one. Even when pressed by the demands of inner truth, men do not easily assume the task of opposing their government's policy, especially in time of war. Nor does the human spirit move.
Also, again, what have we talked about a lot on this show? This coming pivot to China, the new Cold War, or in Russia, Ukraine as well. It becomes more and more difficult to call these things out during these moments. If we think Russia and Ukraine was a little preview of what it's going to be like when broader war breaks out, which it will. It's only a matter of time, which it will. When Taiwan eventually flares up, when they eventually antagonize China enough that it provokes some kind of response, it will. And if we remember how difficult it was to speak up during this Ukraine-Russia conflict, it's going to become a whole lot more difficult as this continues to ramp up. And we need to learn from the example that has been set by MLK and by others, and to be steadfast in being against this no matter how difficult it gets. Right? That's like a lesson we all need to internalize. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to get easier to advocate for these kinds of viewpoints. It's going to get more difficult. But we can't let that stop us or change our viewpoint about it. We can't.
Move without great difficulty against all the apathy of conformist thought within one's own bosom and in the surrounding world. Moreover, when the issues at hand seem as perplexing as they often do in the case of this dreadful conflict, we are always on the verge of being mesmerized by uncertainty. But we must move on. Some of us who have already begun to break the silence of the night have found that the calling to speak is often a vocation of agony, but we must speak. We must speak with all the humility that is appropriate to our limited vision, but we must speak. And we must rejoice as well, for in all our history, there has never been such a monumental descent during a war by the American people. Polls reveal that almost 15 million Americans explicitly oppose the war in Vietnam.
It speaks to how far America's come in the wrong direction since this time as well. We've talked before as well how there was at least, the media in America has always been subservient to the state, but there was some remotely oppositional journalism going on in mainstream media, going after the activities of the CIA and the FBI and the intelligence community, actually presenting different viewpoints about the war or other issues. Advocating against these things. This just doesn't exist anymore. This does not exist on the mainstream level at all. That's why Trump made so many of these media people uncomfortable, because it forced him to actually sort of like take a position for once in their careers. They're so paralyzed by being seen as partisan or whatever. There's zero oppositional journalism when it comes to the media and the U.S. government, especially when it pertains to their role with imperialism and their connections to the military-industrial complex. In fact, the time you see the mainstream corporate media being oppositional to the U.S. government is when they're not being militaristic enough, right? That's how far that has flipped. That's how far we've gone in the wrong direction since that time. When Biden was pulling out of Afghanistan, remember, that's when all these nonpartisan journalists, now they were all willing to get all high and mighty and get up on their soapboxes about that, criticizing Biden for abandoning the poor people of Afghanistan, etc. Or Trump talking to dictators, talking to Kim Jong-un, talking to Putin, not being militaristic enough. That's when you see this oppositional streak coming up in American corporate media, never actually in opposition to the military-industrial complex or to the intelligence community types. Like now they've gone on MSNBC and these like mainstream liberal media networks. You got people from the CIA just like showing up as analysts on CNN, on MSNBC. Zero effort to ever push back against any of these claims about other countries. Zero effort to ever investigate what these police departments are saying. They still just act as stenographers for the security state, for police departments, for the military, for the intelligence agencies. So you talk about how so many Americans were opposed to the war in Vietnam. That's partially because there were still journalists doing their jobs. There were still newspapers doing their basic jobs of journalism and informing people of what was going on in this war. That shit is not happening anymore. It's happening here on Twitch for a few hundred people, and I'm happy to have it, but the people that have the power, the mainstream media platforms, it's just constant stenographers for the security state, for the police, the intelligence agencies, the military. And Congress people, there's actually CIA agents in Congress. And these very same CIA agents are the ones saying, like, don't ever talk about abolish the police ever again. Does anyone find that weird? That you've got a CIA agent in the Democratic Party being like, the Democratic Party loses because of defund the police. I wonder if there's any connection. Yeah, back then it's not like it was common practice, but it's been so homogenized and every independent journalism totally privatized, totally defunded. Zero effort in media to oppose these powerful interests, powerful corporate interests, the same people that pay for because they literally pay for the platforms. That's normal. That's normal. And like I was saying, it's not like these Republicans that because they say a few things about the FBI or the CIA or about the war in Ukraine that they're going to be some allies, that they're going to form some, like there are people actually talk about Republicans in Congress like they're going to form some church committee and investigate the CIA and look at what they're up to, as if they're not just going to fucking go try and purge these institutions of any remotely liberal or moderate forces, just install their own fucking reactionary cronies even more in these agencies. People acting like conservatives are going to be some kind of allies in this. We're on Jeff's own Twitch right now, and he pays us like fucking dirt. Yes, he does. Those same Republicans want to drone Snowden. I don't know. It's unbelievable. There's people just because they correctly hate the Democratic Party and correctly can't stand this liberal class that are warmongers and do support these agencies. But they're so reactionary against those people that they're like, so conservatives must be my allies here. It's like, no. No, they're not. Yeah, MTG wants to abolish the FBI and replace it with an even more fascist agency. It's amazing that people fall for that. That's once again, that's like the Trotskyist to neocon pipeline. That's how you end up becoming a neocon from that direction. Don't let it happen to you.
Additional millions cannot bring themselves around to support it. And even those millions who do support the war have fought it, confused and doubt-ridden. This reveals that millions have chosen to move beyond the prophesying of smooth patriotism to the high grounds of firm dissent based upon the mandates of conscience and the reading of history. Now, of course, one of the difficulties in speaking out today grows out of the fact that there are those who are seeking to equate dissent with disloyalty. It's a dark day in our nation.
Again, just
when
it's so timeless. We need to remember this message.
Will seek to
we need to internalize and understand this message now, but we're going to need it even more in the years ahead when things continue to ramp up, which we all know they will.
Use every method to silence dissent. Something is happening and people are not going to be silent. The truth must be told. And I say that those who are seeking to make it appear that anyone who opposes the war in Vietnam is a fool or a traitor or an enemy of our soldiers is a person who has taken a stand against the best in our tradition. Yes, we must stand and we must speak. Over the past 2 years, as I have moved to break the betrayal of my own silences and to speak from the burnings of my own heart, as I have called for radical departures from the destruction of Vietnam, many persons have questioned me about the wisdom of my path. At the heart of their concerns, this query has often loomed large and loud. Why are you speaking about the war, Dr. King? Why are you joining the voices of dissent? Peace and civil rights don't mix, they say. And so this morning I speak to you on this issue because I am determined to take the gospel seriously. And I come this morning to my pulpit to make a passionate plea to my beloved nation. This sermon is not addressed to Hanoi or to the National Liberation Front. It is not addressed to China or to Russia, nor is it an attempt to overlook the ambiguity of the total situation and the need for a collective solution to the tragedy of Vietnam. Neither is it an attempt to make North Vietnam or the National Liberation Front paragons of virtue, nor to overlook the role they must play in a successful resolution of the problem. This morning, however, I wish not to speak with Hanoi and the National Liberation Front, but rather to my fellow Americans who bear the greatest responsibility in ending a conflict that has exacted a heavy price on both continents. Now, since I am a preacher by calling, I suppose it is not surprising that I have 7 major reasons for bringing Vietnam into the field of my moral vision. There is at the outset a very obvious an almost facile connection between the war in Vietnam and the struggle I and others have been waging in America. A few years ago, there was a shining moment in that struggle. It seemed as if there was a real promise of hope for the poor, both black and white, through the poverty program. There were experiments, hopes, and new beginnings. Then came the build-up in Vietnam, and I watched.
By the way, this chat is one of the few places where I don't feel totally insane. We love it, Lana. I'm so happy that you're here too. It's very much same. Very much same. This community gives me that same feeling, and I always appreciate hearing those kind of comments.
Watch the program broken as if it was some idle political plaything of a society gone mad on war. And I knew that America would never invest the necessary funds or energies in rehabilitation of its poor, so long as adventures like Vietnam continue to draw men and skills and money like some demonic, destructive suction tube. And you may not know it, my friends, but it is estimated that we spend $500,000 to kill each enemy soldier, while we spend only $53 for each person classified as poor.
And think about that discrepancy today. Like, the military budget in 68 $75 billion. You know, talk about going in the wrong direction when it comes to like policing and social justice and racial justice, mass incarceration. Oh, here's actually a graph from the 60s to today. $1967, it's at $78 billion. 1968, it's at $84 billion per year. Just thinking about the poverty reduction, infrastructure, things that could have been spent at that time. That's when MLK was giving that speech. And then going to today, where it is at $778 billion. And Biden just raised it even more. Annually. Biden's whole Build Back Better framework was like $1.3 trillion over a decade. And people talked about it like it was the craziest thing they'd ever imagined, that the US government would spend so much money on reducing poverty and, you know, these kinds of like big social programs that were in that package every single year. $778 billion. So talk about the various ways that things have gone in the complete wrong direction since MLK gave the speech and since he was assassinated for advocating for these kind of viewpoints. When it comes to the black community, like in particularly, the policing, the mass incarceration, the war on drugs, the militarization of the police, the militarized occupying of these communities, destroying these communities, flooding them filled with drugs, you know. And then with American imperialism, like he's speaking out against American imperialism in this speech specifically, and where that went, both in terms of the funds that are being spent on defense every single year versus like what they're actually doing around the world. It was in Vietnam in this speech, but what did they do after, you know, after MLK was killed? Just continued this absolute bloody path of destruction across the world, destroying and subjugating the global south and bending all these countries in Latin America and Southeast Asia and Africa to their will, snuffing out ruthlessly with ruthless violence every single revolutionary movement whenever one would pop up, using military invasions, coups, assassinations, subversion, media propaganda, every method at their disposal to ruthlessly snuff out any revolutionary movement that remotely pushed back against their iron-fisted grip over the global economic system. You know, it's depressing, but that's why we still need to listen to this speech and why we still need to remember these words and continue to live by them. And you see why MLK was assassinated when you started articulating these ideas. You know, that's how this stuff has been allowed to continue for generations. But then they put it like, as I was saying earlier, then they put up a statue in Washington, D.C., and that's it. That makes it okay. Right? We're post-racial. We got a black president. We have an MLK statue in the nation's capital. Meanwhile, every single thing that this man spent his life railing against has just gone exponentially worse since his death, both domestically and around the world. But here's a statue, though. He gets a statue once again. That's what happens.
And much of that $53 goes for salaries to people who are not poor.
For sure, HTA.
So I was increasingly compelled to see the war as an enemy of the poor and attack it as such. Perhaps a more tragic recognition of reality took place when it became clear to me that the war was doing far more than devastating the hopes of the poor at home. It was sending their sons and their brothers and their husbands to fight and die in extraordinarily high proportion relative to the rest of the population. We were taking the black young men who had been crippled by society and sending them 8,000 miles away to guarantee liberties in Southeast Asia, which they had not found in Southwest Georgia and East Holland. So we have been repeatedly faced with the cruel irony of watching Negro and white boys on TV screens as they kill and die together for a nation that has been unable to seat them together in the same schoolroom.
And it's funny, like, this other, like, perverse distortion of MLK's views when he talks about working with poor white people, and he talks about how poor white people are also victimized by this very system, and how poor white people and poor black and brown people were being sent to Vietnam to kill poor Vietnamese people, and drawing these links together. And the takeaway that some people have from that is like, well, we need to work with white racists. We need to be allowed to say slurs so the white racists know that we can be on their side. That's their takeaway. That's their takeaway from this kind of idea, this like rainbow coalition idea, that like we need to all these different classes that are being oppressed by capitalism, imperialism need to work together. And that's the takeaway from some of these folks. We need more socialism, but with more slurs. That's what that means. We need to be able to say slurs so then we don't alienate these white racists. That's the takeaway. They'll even claim that's what Fred Hampton would do. No, I know. Because Fred Hampton, someone else that was making that argument about how poor white people and poor black people and poor brown people and poor indigenous people are all being held under the thumb of the system and they all need to work together. But that's not the takeaway, though. That's not the takeaway. Is we need to work with Klan members to overthrow the government. That's not what the lesson is. Noted slur enjoyer Fred Hampton. So it's just a preposterous thing that, like, this again, going into these like post-left people these are the very same people that say this kind of thing are the ones that think that Republicans or conservatives are going to be their allies against the security state or against imperialism or against these entrenched police forces. You know, it's just preposterous. It's a preposterous thing to believe. Or for that to be your takeaway about these kind of comments from MLK or Fred Hampton or anyone else. If you want people to work together, you have to be conscious of class and social strata within the working class. Not everyone is oppressed the same. Do you live in reality or do you live in an episode of South Park? Yeah, absolutely. Like pretending that doesn't exist still, while understanding that poor people are all being oppressed, but not understanding that there is still hierarchies that exist within that by design, right? It's by design because it makes it more impossible for people to overthrow the system, right? But no one needs to pretend that doesn't exist. Which is a frustrating thing. You've seen that in people that have attempted to work on building socialism in the United States or Canada, is that they've never really, they've seen, in many cases, I think, the black community as being kind of a means to an end and not really like thinking about overcoming the injustice or undoing the harm that's been caused in these communities. We see the same thing with socialists in Canada that are against land back and that are against kind of incorporating indigenous rights or any kind of element of like indigenous characteristics to socialist movements here in Canada. It's just ridiculous. In a settler colonialist country, they think that socialists really just need to understand that poor white people and poor indigenous people are just all being oppressed in the exact same way, which is obviously not true. Yeah, seriously. Westerners want settler socialism. That's right. Let's continue this. But, just very frustrating, though, that can be the takeaway to these kind of comments from MLK or other black revolutionary leaders.
So we watch them in brutal solidarity, burning the huts of a poor village. But we realize that they would hardly live on the same block in Chicago or Atlanta. And I could not be silent in the face of such cruel manipulation of the poor. My third reason moves to an even deeper level of awareness, for it grows out of my experience in the ghettos of the North over the last 3 years, especially the last 3 summers. As I have walked among the desperate, rejected, and angry young men, I have told them that Molotov cocktails and rifles would not solve their problems. I have tried to offer them my deepest compassion while maintaining my conviction that social change comes most meaningfully through nonviolent action. But
that's when I do that. That's what does, especially considering what happened to MLK. That's when I think about that Kwame Ture quote, who obviously learned from MLK a great deal about nonviolence, how it can only work when your enemy or your opponent has a conscience. The United States has none, which is just the reality.
Ask, and rightly so, what about Vietnam? They ask if our own nation wasn't using massive doses of violence to solve its problems, to bring about the changes it wanted. Their questions hit home, and I knew that I could never again raise my voice against the violence of the oppressed in the ghettos without having first spoken clearly to the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today, my own government. For the sake of those boys, for the sake of this government, for the sake of the hundreds of thousands,
not the Koreans, not the Russians,
I cannot be silent. There's been a lot of applauding over the last few years. They've applauded our total movement. They've applauded me. America and most of its newspapers applauded me in Montgomery. And I stood before thousands of Negroes getting ready to riot when my home was bombed and said, we can't do it this way. They applauded us in the sit-in movement. We nonviolently decided to sit in at lunch counters. They applauded us on the freedom rides when we accepted blows without retaliation. They praised us in Albany and Birmingham and Selma, Alabama. Oh, the press was so noble in its applause and so noble in its praise when I was saying, be nonviolent toward Bull Connor. When I was saying, be nonviolent toward Jim Clark. There's something strangely inconsistent about a nation and a press that will praise you when you say be nonviolent toward Jim Clark, but will curse and damn you when you say be nonviolent toward little brown Vietnamese children. There's something wrong with that press.
Damn.
And as if the weight of such a commitment to the life and health of America were not enough, another burden of responsibility was placed upon me in 1964. And I cannot forget that the Nobel Peace Prize was not just something taking place, but it was a commission to work harder than I had ever worked before for the brotherhood of man. This is a calling that takes me beyond national allegiances, but even if it were not present, I would yet have to live with the meaning of my commitment to the ministry of Jesus Christ. To me, the relationship of this ministry to the making of peace is so obvious that I sometimes marvel at those who ask me why I am speaking against the war. Could it be that they do not know that the good news was meant for all men, for communists and capitalists, for their children and ours, for black and white, for revolutionary and conservative? Have they forgotten that my ministry is in obedience to the one who loved his enemies so fully that he died for them? What then can I say to the Viet Cong or to Castro or to Mao as a faithful minister to Jesus Christ? Can I threaten them with death? Or must I not share with them my life? And finally, I must be true to my conviction that I share with all men the calling to be a son of the living God. Beyond the calling of race or nation or creed is this vocation of sonship and brotherhood. And because I believe that the Father is deeply concerned, especially for his suffering and helpless and outcast children, I come today to speak for them. And as I ponder the madness of Vietnam and search within myself for ways to understand and respond in compassion, my mind goes constantly to the people of that peninsula. I speak not now of the soldiers of each side, not of the military government in Saigon, but simply of the people who have been under the curse of war for almost 3 continuous decades now. I think
So
of them too
unthinkable.
because it is clear to me that there will be no meaningful solution
Entire lifetimes, entire
until some
generations.
attempt is made to know these people and hear their broken cries. Now let me tell you the truth about it. They must see Americans as
Unimaginable to
strange
think about.
liberators. You realize that the Vietnamese people,
I mean, and even when he talks about the Vietnamese, fighting 30 years of war, first against the French, then against the Americans, but then we're calling like 100 years of French colonization prior to that, just living under the French regime. And then you had World War II. They were occupied by Japan during World War II. Like entire lifetimes, entire generations went on in Vietnam with this struggle ongoing. It's truly unfathomable for us that have grown up in the West to really think about.
proclaimed their own independence in 1945 after a combined French and Japanese occupation.
There we go.
And incidentally, this was before the Communist Revolution in China. They were led by Ho Chi Minh. And this
Uncle
is
Ho.
a little-known fact. These people declared themselves independent in 1945. They quoted our Declaration of Independence in their document of freedom.
Ho Chi Minh tried to make an appeal to the Americans on that level. You should support us on this. We're inspired by your revolution. You should back us on this. Just like we were talking about that Gerald Horne idea, the counter-revolution of 1776, exposing that for being not a revolution in the first place. Not any kind of working-class revolution. It was a reactionary movement to preserve slavery, to preserve, power and hegemony for this very specific, oligarch class. A lot of socialist revolutionaries tried to do this and got rebuffed. It just exposes it for being complete horse shit. Castro too, yeah. It just exposes all that nonsense as being total bullshit.
And yet our government refused to recognize them. President Truman said they were not ready for independence.
Fucking Truman.
So we fell victim as a nation at that time of the same deadly arrogance that has poisoned the international situation for all of these years. France then set out to reconquer its former colony. And they fought 8 long, hard, brutal years trying to reconquer Vietnam.
And got
You
their
know who
asses
helped
handed to them.
France? It was the United States of America. It came to the point that we were meeting more than 80% of the war cost. And even when France started despairing of its reckless action, we did not. And in 1954, a conference was called at Geneva, and an agreement was reached because France had been defeated at Dien Bien Phu. Even after that, and even after the Geneva Accord, we did not stop. We must face the sad fact that our government sought,
Hell yeah, Dimitri.
in a real sense, to sabotage the Geneva Accord. Well, after the French were defeated, it looked as if independence and land reform would come through the
And also,
Geneva
talk about socialism being a science, right? I don't think MLK ever called himself a socialist. But what is he doing right now besides engaging in historical and dialectical materialism right now, talking about the origins of the Vietnam conflict? Because it is a science, right? You don't need to be a socialist. You don't need to be a Marxist if you observe these forces and just talk about them and talk about the actual real historical context of this conflict, which everyone else refuses to do. If you're honest about history, you'll end up doing dialectical materialism by accident. Exactly. Who was the socialist leader that put forward that theory, did so much to advance that theory? I just can't remember. But whoever it was, though, I'm sure that they did nothing wrong.
agreement. But instead, the United States came and started supporting a man named D.M., who turned out to be one of the most ruthless dictators in the history of the world. He set out to silence all opposition. People were brutally murdered merely because they raised their voices against the brutal policies of D.M.
It's not my fault reality is
Peasants
Marxist.
watched and
That's
cringed
right.
as D.M. ruthlessly rooted out all opposition. The peasants watched as all this was presided over by United States influence, and then by increasing numbers of United States troops who came to help quell the insurgency that Diem's methods had aroused. When Diem was overthrown, they may have been happy, but
That's
the
good,
long
carry your
line
life.
of military dictatorship
Once you know enough
seems
history,
to
you
offer
become
no
one of
real
two things, a
change,
Marxist or a liar. I
especially
like
in
that.
terms of their need for land and peace. And who are we supporting in Vietnam today? It's a man by the name of General Key, who fought with the French against his own people, and who said on one occasion that the greatest hero of his life is Hitler. This is who we are supporting in Vietnam today. Oh, our government,
He was supporting Hitler,
press generally, won't tell us
supporting
these things,
Hitler
but God told
quoting
me to tell you this
fascists in
morning.
Vietnam, you say.
The truth must be told.
Good thing we've moved on from doing that kind of nasty business.
The only change came from America as we increased our true commitments in support of governments which were singularly corrupt, inept, and without popular support. And all the while, the people read our leaflets and received regular promises of peace and
This is some guy,
democracy
Rob
and land
Russo,
reform.
some leftist based in Canada.
Now they
I was turned on to this sick individual, and I found this.
Dan, thank you. Thank you, Dan, for the raid. I appreciate it. Our friend Dan Simpson, everybody. Welcome, Dan. Thank you. How was your stream today? Dan Simpson Raiders, get in here. Smash the follow button. I'm Rob. Hello. What is up? We're talking about MLK today, and we're listening to MLK's speech, why I'm opposed to the war in Vietnam.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Taking a look at MLK's legacy, the way he's been whitewashed as this sort of revolutionary figure as was written about extensively by our guy, Vladimir Ilyich Ulyanov. And talking about how when he made this turn towards connecting the struggle for racial and social justice in America to the struggle against imperialism abroad in Southeast Asia and elsewhere, that's when he became a dangerous figure to the establishment. Here we go. Here's more.
Languish under our bombs and consider us not their fellow Vietnamese, the real enemy. They move sadly and apathetically as we herd them off the land of their fathers into concentration camps where minimal social needs are rarely met. They know they must move or be destroyed by our bombs. So they go, primarily women and children and the aged. They watch as we poison their water, as we kill 1 million acres of their crops. They must weep as the bulldozers roar through their areas preparing to destroy the precious trees. They wander into the towns and see thousands of the children homeless without clothes, running in packs on the streets like animals. They see the children degraded by our soldiers as they beg for food. They see the children selling their sisters to our soldiers, soliciting for their mothers. We have destroyed their two most cherished institutions, the family and the village. We have destroyed their land and their crops. We have cooperated in the crushing of the nation's only non-communist revolutionary political force, the United Buddhist Church. This is the role our nation has taken, the role of those who make peaceful revolutions impossible by refusing to give up the privileges and the pleasures that comes from the immense profits of overseas investment. I'm convinced.
It's kind of interesting how he talks about his philosophy of nonviolence too, but then also it talks about how the violence, if and when it does happen, is not the fault of the people that engage in it, but is the fault of the people that are perpetrating it. You know, and he talked about this when it comes to riots in black communities and when violence did erupt in these situations. He talked about the actual causes of that. It wasn't just a matter of condemning all violence and revolution. He literally admits that the activities of the imperialists at home and abroad made peaceful revolution impossible.
If we are to get on the right side of the world revolution, we as a nation must undergo.
Oh, you can't talk about that world. You can't getting on the right side of the world revolution, though. That's a big. That's like an MK Ultra phrase for these, like, whoever the intelligence guys that were monitoring him and watching the speech. The Kill Bill sirens started going off when you hear that kind of stuff. Oh boy, you can't be talking about participating in that world revolution. I mean, it just shows how anti-communism was used to even target people like MLK who advocated for socialist concepts because they were correctly observing them in nature and talking about them, but wasn't a card carrying socialist, anything like that. But anyone that advocated for these ideas still fell into that camp, regardless of whether they considered themselves a socialist or not. And that was used to justify whatever harassment or oppression or assassination that was necessary.
Radical revolution of values. We must rapidly begin to shift from a thing-oriented society to a person-oriented society when machines and computers' profit motives and property rights are considered more important than people. The giant triplets of racism, militarism, and economic exploitation are incapable of being conquered. A true revolution of values will soon cause us to question the fairness and justice of many of our present policies. On the one hand, we are called to play the Good Samaritan on life's roadside, but that will be only an initial act. One day we must come to see that the whole Jericho road must be changed so that men and women will not be constantly beaten and robbed as they make their journey on life's highway. True compassion is more than flinging a coin to a beggar. A true revolution of values will soon look uneasily on the glaring contrast of poverty and wealth with righteous indignation. It will look across the seas and see individual capitalists of the West investing huge sums of money in Asia, Africa, and South America, only to take the profits out with no concern for the social betterment of the countries, and say this is not just. It will look at our alliance.
You don't go to poor countries to make money. Most countries are rich.
With the landed gentry of Latin America and say this is not just. The Western arrogance of feeling that it has everything to teach others and nothing to learn from them is not just. A true revolution of values will lay hands on the world order and say of war, this way of settling differences is not just. This business of burning human beings with napalm, of filling our nation's homes and with orphans and widows, of injecting poisonous drugs of hate into the veins of peoples normally humane, of sending men home from dark and bloody battlefields, physically handicapped and psychologically deranged, cannot be reconciled with wisdom, justice, and love. A nation that continues year after year to spend more money on military defense than on programs of social uplift is approaching spiritual death. Oh, my friends, if that is any one thing that we must see today, is that these are revolutionary times. All over the globe, men are revolting against old systems of exploitation and oppression. And out of the wounds of a frail world, new systems of justice and equality are being born. The shirtless and barefoot people of the land are rising up as never before. The people who sat in darkness have seen a great light. And they are saying unconsciously, as we say in one of our freedom songs, ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. And it is a sad fact that because of comfort, complacency, a morbid fear of communism, our proneness to adjust to injustice, the Western nations that initiated so much of the revolutionary spirit of the modern world have now become the arch anti-revolutionaries. And this has driven many to feel that only Marxism has a revolutionary spirit. And therefore, communism is a judgment against our failure to make democracy real and follow through on the revolutions that we initiated. And our only hope today lies in our ability to recapture the revolutionary spirit and go out into a sometimes hostile world, declaring eternal hostility to poverty, racism, and militarism. With this powerful commitment, we shall boldly challenge the status quo. We shall boldly challenge unjust mores, and thereby speed up the day when every valley shall be exalted, and every mountain and hill shall be made low. The rough places shall be made plain, and the crooked places straight. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. A genuine revolution of values means, in the final analysis, that our loyalties must become ecumenical rather than sectional. Every nation must now develop an overriding loyalty to mankind as a whole in order to preserve the best in their individual societies. This call for a worldwide fellowship that lifts the neighborly concern beyond one's tribe, race, class, and nation is in reality a call for an all-embracing, unconditional love for all men. This oft misunderstood and misinterpreted concept, so readily dismissed by the niches of the world as a weak and cowardly force, has now become an absolute necessity for the survival of mankind.
A real coats W when nonviolence is preached by the representatives of the state. While the state does dole out heaps of violence to its citizens, it reveals itself to be a con. That's the whole contradiction with nonviolence in the first place, right? Is that there's already violence, That's the amazing thing you see in the media whenever these kind of movements do start, and the fixation on violence, this fixation on property damage. And no, you can never be violent. You can never throw a brick. You can never throw a Molotov cocktail. You can never do anything to a police officer. You can never engage in violence, while sort of refusing to acknowledge that there is already violence. There's violence that flows in one direction, from the top down. There's brutal violence every single day, every single moment. State violence. State violence is allowed, it's encouraged, it's supported, it's praised. or people deny that it exists in the first place. Social murder, again, going back to the idea of socialism as a science, something Engels talked about. Social murder happens of course, a lot in the black community. It happens all the time. There's constant violence, constant state violence going down into these communities, that is the inherent contradiction when you talk about preaching nonviolence. Or when you get this kind of finger-wagging attitude towards people that advocate for violence. Like, why are it goes into the Palestine, and there's incredible and interesting parallels between the struggle for Palestinians and the struggle of black people in the United States, right? These struggles are linked. And people say the same thing, why are the Palestinians so violent? Why are they bombing? Why are they firing rockets into Israel? Why don't they just debate? Why don't they just protest? Every single thing, every single element a fucking child that picks up a rock is denounced for violence. And the IDF, this advanced military with billions of dollars of funding, and all the military toys, the army that has planes and bombs and soldiers and tanks, their violence is permitted and accepted. The IDF has killed 5 Palestinian teenagers so far this year. It's January 16th. And this is totally okay. We saw the IDF murder Shireen Abu Akleh a couple months ago. And what did the Biden administration have to say about it? Oh, they had some stern words. They had stern words for Israel for executing this journalist. Well, what happened with that investigation? What happened? Was there any consequences for Israel for that? Is there any words of condemnation for Israel when they're killing Palestinian teenagers? Versus what happens in Iran or Venezuela or any of these places when they kill people, then we really have to have our stern lectures about it. Israel just elected a openly fascist government that's advocating even more openly for ethnic cleansing and violence toward Palestinians. And we still say, why are the Palestinians violent? Why do they fire rockets? Why do they fire rockets, which Norman Finkelstein calls glorified fireworks? Why do they fire rockets into Israel? Why are they being violent? Why are these George Floyd protests? They're burning down Wendy's, burning down buildings, smashing bank windows, burning down parking lots. We have to defend, not only do we have to defend that with more ruthless state violence, but encourage vigilante violence as well. As we saw with Kyle Rittenhouse, encourage and normalize and legalize people engaging in vigilante violence to defend property, not even people, not even thing, but property that they don't own. It's so strange how we even fetishize the state violence, and then we get at our finger wagging. We get at our finger wagging when it comes to people that advocate for violence in the black community, in immigrant communities, in the environmental justice community, indigenous justice movement, Palestinians, Iraqis, Afghans, Syrians, anyone that challenges this kind of relentless violence coming from one side. And we get at our finger-wagging lectures. Why aren't you being nonviolent? It's really sick. And like we were saying before, after MLK gave the speech in 1968, all these issues have just gotten exponentially worse. That's what I wanted. I started talking about the statue and how it's an insult. It's an insult that the U.S. government builds a monument for MLK and suggests in any way that it honors his memory or his rhetoric or his movement in any way, while all these behaviors, all these activities have just gotten exponentially worse since he was assassinated, which we all know was most likely directly implicated with, the state in the first place, as much as they like to claim it's some lone racist, lone gun nut. watching some San Francisco cops shoot a teenager because he was annoyed, and everyone shrugs their shoulders. It's remarkable how, not even desensitized to it, but how much we just like people support it. They say, well, they had it, you know, there's people that the first thing they do is defend the ability of the police to commit this kind of violent crime. The state calls its violence law and that of the individual crime. Yeah, we gotta wag the finger at people that advocate for violent revolution, for violent resistance. We gotta get our finger wagging stern lectures out about that, and say nothing whatever about the relentless stream of one-sided state violence and social murder that takes place every single day in America, in Canada, and that we project abroad all over the world. Oh, shit.
Men are revolting against old systems of exploitation and oppression. And out of the wounds of a frail world, new systems of justice and equality are being born. The shirtless and barefoot people of the land are rising up as never before. The people who sat in darkness have seen a great light. And they are saying unconsciously, as we say in one of our freedom songs, ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. And it is a sad fact that because of comfort, complacency, a morbid fear of communism, our proneness to adjust to injustice, the Western nations that initiated so much of the revolutionary spirit of the modern world have now become the arch anti-revolutionaries. And this has driven many to feel that only Marxism has a revolutionary spirit. Therefore, communism is a judgment against our failure to make democracy real and follow through on the revolutions that we initiated.
You're damn right.
Our only hope today lies in our ability to recapture the revolutionary spirit and go out into a sometimes hostile world.
This is a good point too, Lana. Like, it's not enough just to center the critique of the state, because we're specifically talking about a bourgeois, white supremacist settler state. The state as a tool exists to uphold that kind of class society. A socialist state using violence to suppress the bourgeoisie can't really be subjected to the same critique, because it exists to uphold an entirely different kind of society. Well, that's what I mean. The finger wagging doesn't just go towards... This is a good point, right? The finger wagging just doesn't go towards people that are engaging in revolutionary violence, but the finger wagging goes towards socialist states that do use violence and repression to secure their own political project, which I was saying on Friday is not something that we should shy away from, and in fact something that we should embrace. Right? It's not the fact that it's the state doing it. It's like, what are the goals of the state? To what end are they wielding this kind of state violence? You know? That's not inherently bad, but what are your goals? If your goals are to preserve a system that centers social justice and economic justice and anti-imperialism, then it's justified. If it's to entrench that system, then no, it's not justified, and revolutionary violence against that is. In my opinion.
Eternal hostility to poverty, racism, and militarism. With this powerful commitment, we shall boldly challenge the status quo.
Yeah, it's only authoritarian when socialists use the state to preserve and consolidate their political power. When liberal democracies do it, it's fine. And the people that say this, they don't even recognize that liberal democracies do it, right? They've deluded themselves into thinking that it just doesn't happen, that it only happens in socialism states, and ignore all the ways that their own states engage in the exact same thing, or worse. You know? Similar realization by student leader in China 100 years ago. That's what I was saying on Friday. Remember, it's like they'll suggest that the only purges and repression that only takes place in socialist states. And because, you know, I'm an affluent white person that grew up in the suburbs and I can say and do everything that I want and I have a nice lifestyle, that means that we don't have repression here. It's like, no, you just benefit from the repression. You just personally benefit from it. That allows you to ignore all the ways that your own state is engaging all the same behavior that you wag your finger about when it comes to, you know, the Soviet Union or China or Cuba or wherever else, Korea or what have you.
We shall boldly challenge unjust mores and thereby speed up the day when every valley shall be exalted and every mountain and hill shall be made low. The rough places shall be made plain and the crooked places straight. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed and all flesh shall see it together. A genuine revolution of values means in the final analysis that our loyalties must become ecumenical rather than sectional. Every nation must now develop an overriding loyalty to mankind as a whole in order to preserve the best in their individual societies. This calls for a worldwide fellowship that lifts the neighborly concern beyond one's tribe, race, class, and nation, is in reality a call for an all-embracing, unconditional love for all men. This oft misunderstood and misinterpreted concept, so readily dismissed by the niches of the world as a weak and cowardly force, has now become an absolute necessity for the survival of mankind.
For sure,
When I
Lana.
speak
Yeah,
of love,
absolutely.
I'm not speaking of some sentimental and weak response. I am speaking of that force which all of the great religions have seen as the supreme unifying principle of life. Love
It's
is
incredibly strange how rare this kind of empathy is, because this sentiment has been destroyed. It's been intentionally destroyed. Remember, we always hear about the human nature argument about capitalism. Well, it can never be any different. Human nature, we're just greedy and we just want to climb over one another and destroy one another. No, that we've been brainwashed to be like that, you know? Because any strain of this kind of radical empathy has been ruthlessly carved out, right? Because you can't have anyone spreading these kinds of ideas. As I've argued many times, and I'll continue to argue this, the capitalist system that we live under is contradictory to human nature. It perverts and mutates our nature, right? Yeah, we're all just crazed, hairless apes just smashing each other with rocks. Yeah, it's just, that's the thing. It is rare to hear these kinds of comments because this exact kind of message has just been ruthlessly snuffed out in our culture. The idea that we should have social solidarity with one another in our own communities, in our own societies, and with people internationally as well. Ruthlessly snuffed out. Hot take is that there is no human nature, but there is a human condition and it can change. Absolutely. Absolutely. It can change. That's what I was saying the other day too. It's just like we don't need to, just because we understand that there's people that don't believe in and don't want the political vision that we're offering, doesn't mean we should just be like, well, they don't want it, so you know, it's part of our jobs to educate and inform and re-educate and change people's minds.
Somehow the key that unlocks the door, which leads to ultimate reality. This Hindu, Muslim, Christian.
The story of the Chinese emperor, the last Chinese emperor, I think is such an amazing story, right? It's an amazing story out of the Chinese Revolution. Who wound up living a quiet life of dignity and work, and changed his viewpoint and changed his attitude. You know, there's something incredibly beautiful about that.
Jewish Buddhist belief about ultimate reality is beautifully summed up in the first epistle of John. Let us love one another, for God is love. And every one that loveth is born of God and knoweth God. He that loveth not knoweth not God, for God is love. If we love one another, God dwelleth in us, and his love is perfected in us. Let me say finally that I oppose the war in Vietnam because I love America. I speak out against this war, not in anger, but with anxiety and sorrow in my heart, and above all with a passionate desire to see our beloved country stand as the moral example of the world. I speak out against this war because I'm disappointed with America. And there can
the patriotic socialists probably try and point to this kind of stuff as an example of why they need to continue to wave around the American flag. I mean, it just goes to show you that these efforts to take away people's concerns by talking about loving the country or, you know, wanting to all cooperate, how completely, that all that messaging fell on completely dead ears. And he was still called an anti-American and all the things that that kind of stuff was meant to shut down. It just goes to show how far that gets you.
No great disappointment where there is no great love. I'm disappointed with our failure to deal positively and forthrightly with the triple evils of racism, economic exploitation, and militarism. We are presently moving down a dead-end road that can lead to national disaster. America has strayed to the far country of racism and militarism. The home that all too many Americans left was solidly structured idealistically. Its pillars were soundly grounded in the insights of our Judeo-Christian heritage. All men are made in the image of God. All men are brothers. All men are created equal. Every man is an heir to a legacy of dignity and worth. Every man has rights that are neither conferred by nor derived from the state. They are God-given. Out of one blood, God made all men to dwell upon the face of the earth. What a marvelous foundation for any home. What a glorious and healthy place to inhabit. But America strayed away, and this unnatural excursion has brought only confusion and bewilderment. It has left hearts aching with guilt and minds distorted with irrationality. It is time for all people of conscience to call upon America to come back home. Come home, America. Oh, my Khayyam is right, the moving finger.
It's actually kind of interesting because he referenced Ho Chi Minh and the Viet Minh and trying to appeal to that American revolutionary spirit. And you see him kind of trying to do the same thing, you know? And it just shows time and time again, revolutionary figures, and I understand why they do this, try to make these appeals using the language that Americans understand. And time again, they extend their hand to try and make some connection with these supposed ideals, and they just get spat in the face, you know? Which again just exposes how hollow those ideals always were, and how much it was never true. It was never real. It was always just bullshit.
And having writ moves on, I call on Washington today. I call on every man and woman of goodwill all over America today. I call on the young men of America who must make a choice today to take a stand on this issue. Tomorrow may be too late. The book may close. And don't let anybody make you think that God chose America as his divine messianic force to be a sort of policeman of the whole world. God has a way of standing before the nations with judgment, and it seems that I can hear God saying to America, you're too arrogant. And if you don't change your ways, I will rise up and break the backbone of your power, and I'll place it in the hands of a nation that doesn't even know my name. Be still and know that I'm God. Now, it isn't easy to stand up for truth and for justice. Sometimes it means being frustrated when you tell the truth and take a stand. Sometimes it means that you will walk the streets with a burdened heart. Sometimes it means losing a job. It means being abused and scorned. It may mean having a 7 or 8-year-old child asking your daddy, why do you have to go to jail so much? I've long since learned that to be a follower of Jesus Christ means taking up the cross. And my Bible tells me that Good Friday comes before Easter. Before the crown we wear, there is the cross that we must bear. Let us bear it. Bear it for truth. Bear it for justice. And bear it for peace. Let us go out this morning with that determination. And I have not lost faith. I'm not in despair. Because I know that there is a moral order. I haven't lost faith. Because the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. I can still sing, we shall overcome,
Long
because
as hell.
Carlyle was right. No lie can live forever. We shall overcome because William Cullen Bryant was right. Truth crushed to earth will rise again. We shall overcome because James Russell Lowell was right. Truth forever on the scaffold, wrong forever on the throne, yet that scaffold sways the future. We shall overcome because the Bible is right. You shall reap what you sow. And with this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to go out and transform the jangling discords of our world into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to speed up the day when justice will roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. With this faith, we will be able to speed up the day when the lion and the lamb will lie down together, and every man will sit under his own vine and fig tree, and none shall be afraid, because the words of the Lord have spoken it. With this faith, we will be able to speed up the day when all over the world we will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last. With this faith, we'll sing it as we are getting ready to sing it now. Men will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. And nations will not rise up against nations, neither shall they study war anymore. And
You might even describe it as a classless, stateless society. This kind of utopian vision that's being laid out there. You might describe it as that.
I don't know about you. I ain't gonna study war no more.
Oh yeah. Hell yeah. Great stuff. Great stuff. Like a lot of the stuff in there, again, like we were talking about, it's like you see why he became an active threat to the establishment. You see why it was important for the establishment not only to get MLK out of the picture, but also then to whitewash his revolutionary spirit, to put up the monuments, change the street names, and not change anything about the underlying systems of oppression that he was railing against, not doing anything to undermine global imperialism, global capitalism, all these things. But you put up the statues, you change the street names. You know, we're seeing that same cycle play out now. It's like, right, no systemic changes to policing, more muns to police, killing more black people than ever before. But you got like Black Lives Matter Square in a couple of American cities. Congratulations. You know, you're welcome. As grim as the future looks, I feel like, or at least choose to hope, we are in the second out of a 5-book series. Yeah, that's... I don't know, Sean, that we are ever going to see the mountaintop. And MLK Boulevard in the worst area of every city, for sure. Yeah. I would like to keep... we're going to keep looking at some MLK speeches and keep discussing these things. I think it's really interesting and important discussion to have today. I do have about another 45 minutes or so. And I know it's so fucking crass to do this when we're talking about MLK and talking about all these concepts. But I have to say, if you do like this content, folks, if you're a lurker or you're someone that's come to the community for the first time and you enjoy this community or you enjoy this kind of commentary, please subscribe to this channel, which costs $5 per month, or you can do so totally free of charge using your Amazon Prime account, converted into a Twitch Prime free sub. Every little bit helps, you know? Every little bit helps. I have to, unfortunately, that's just the reality, is that I have to, I can do this commentary and I love doing it, but I have to make the little number at the bottom of the screen go up. I have to make the little number go up. to funnel money up to the world's richest man. Every single day I have to do this. I have to humiliate myself like this, but it's what I have to do. I got to feed Momo. I got to pay rents, take care of my kid, etc., etc. And that's how I do it. That's how I do it. So please.
You've just become an elite member of the Friendship Triangle.
Goodness gracious. Gen X Bushy, thank you so much for the 5 gifted subs. You've been coming through it, Gen X Bushy. You've been coming through a ton lately, and I appreciate it a lot. Seriously, thank you. Gifted a total of 407 in the channel. Gen X Bushy, I really appreciate that. Thank you. So do you have any other takers, folks? Again, I took a huge hit in the subscriber numbers over the holidays. So really trying to boost those numbers back up. So anyone else that wants to support this channel, get the emotes, some of the best emotes on the platform. If you like talking about these subjects, join the community, join Twitch's only trickle down clout and friendship access tiered reward system, 2-dimensional. The only such system that takes place on this entire platform. The Friendship Triangle. It's not a cult.
You've just become an elite
It's
member
not a pyramid
of the
scheme.
Friendship Triangle. You've just become an elite member of the Friendship Triangle.
Thank you so much, Red Wine Terroirist and
Count on
Plunger
me.
Man.
Have good old Rob.
Thank you to you both for the 5 gifted subs. Very,
Is
very
this a
kind of you.
cult?
Thank you. And thank you also to Irate Lump. Irate Lump, 25 months, tier 1. Not a cult.
You can count on
It
me.
is not
and
a
have
cult.
Good old Rob to talk.
Not a
through all
cult
this.
or a pyramid scheme. Important to point this out. But thank you for asking. And thank you, Wild Mambo Queen, for paying it forward. Thank you so much for the gifted sub. Very first gifted sub from Wild Mambo Queen. Thank you so much. Wild Mambo Queen. Very, very kind of you. We're so close, folks. We're so close. One generous chatter could get us to the sub goal for today. One generous chatter could do it. Unbelievably close. And then I can move on from talking about this. As you all know, this is my least favorite part of doing this stream. Is doing this whole song and dance. Making the number go up.
You can
But
count on me.
it's just
and
what you
good
have to
old
do.
Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Slightly Tethered, for the gifted sub. First gifted sub from Slightly Tethered. Very much appreciated, Slightly Tethered. Thank you. Thank you, Valkyrie. It's like I know you understand, but I always think there's probably some lurkers or hate watchers just being like, look at this schmuck. Look at this greedy motherfucker. So I have to preemptively shut that down through my self-deprecating bit, that I do. We're 4 subs away, folks. 4 subs away from meeting the sub goal. And then I can just totally drop this and we can watch some more great content. I can almost taste it. Here, do you want me to do like a kind of thing? Okay. The MLK thing is still good. It's so crass. Talking about
You can count
MLK
on
and then
me
trying to get
and have good
subs.
old Rob to talk you through all this. You
I'm
can
just
count on
doing this
me
to get
and
us
have
to the
good
over
old
the hump
Rob
here.
to talk you through all this.
This is already... Ah.
You can count on me. You're
Go.
gonna have good old Rob to talk you
Not
through all
yet.
this.
I'm trying to do something funny here. You're ruining it by subscribing. You're ruining it. Ah. Unbelievable. No one subscribe again until I do this. Can this get us over the hump? I think it can.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
Is that doing anything for you?
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Syphilufakis. Thank you. Thank you to Dimitri for the gifted sub. Thank you to Wild Mambo Queen for another gifted sub. Thank you to Hot Meal for the 10 months of Tier 1. Thank you so much, Lana, aka Freak Museum, who you should all follow, for the 200 friend coin. And thank you to Syphilufakis for the gifted sub. Very, very kind of you. Thank you so much to everybody for contributing. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you. We did it. We did it. Thank you, folks. Thank you, History Buff, as well. Sometimes I have to dance like that, and that's what excites these weird freaks in this community. Don't ask me why. Don't ask me to explain it. Don't ask me to explain what's going on with that, but here, this is now just to make us mad.
Parliaments, kings, queens, leaders of the world. I've been doing this for a long time, but this is intimidating following. Y'all are incredible.
We talk about subsuming that revolutionary spirit. I'll be right back. Okay, I'll be right back.
And let's lay one thing to rest. I may be a practicing Catholic. I used to go to 7:30 Mass every morning in high school and then in college before I went to the black church. Not a joke. Andy knows this. Andy, it's so great to see you, man. You're one of the greatest we've ever had. You really are, Andy. Andy and I took on apartheid in South Africa and a whole lot else. They didn't want to see him coming. But we used to, that's where we'd organize, to march to segregate the city. My state was, like yours, segregated by law. We were a slave state, to our great shame. And we had a lot of leftovers of the bad things coming from that period of time. But anyway, that's another time. But I learned a lot. And I promise if any preacher preached to me back then, I'm not going to be nearly as long as you were. Actually, I have a bad reputation for speaking too long. He followed the path of Moses, a leader of inspiration, calling on the people not to be afraid. And always, always, as my grandfather would say, keep the faith. He followed the path of Joseph, a believer in dreams and the divinity they carry and the promise they hold. And like John the Baptist, he prepared us for the greater hope ahead, one who came to bear witness to the light. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a nonviolent warrior for justice who followed the word and the way of his Lord and his Savior. On this day of remembrance, we gather at Dr. King's cherished Ebenezer. I say, emphasize the word cherished, Ebenezer. And by the way, sis, every good man, every good brother needs a really strong, strong sister. You think I'm kidding? I'm no Dr. King, and my sister's not you, but I tell you what, she's smarter, better looking, and a better person than I am. Managed all my campaigns. Folks, you know, on this day of remembrance, as we gather here at his cherished Ebenezer, to commemorate what would have been Dr. King's 94th birthday, we gather to contemplate his moral vision and to commit ourselves to his path, the path that leads.
Fuck. Oh. One day I will come back from going to the bathroom and I will not be muted. No, but I'm just like, we talk about the ways that, you know, it's insulting the way that Washington, D.C. is like tried to sanctify MLK. They put up the statue. You have Joe Biden, this fucking segregationist. Acting like he's some civil rights leader or talking about MLK. You know, and we talked about the way that Lenin talked about the way these revolutionary figures had their revolutionary spirit completely whitewashed and consumed by the bourgeoisie, right? And this is the ultimate example of this, right? This segregationist, this father of mass incarceration. Like this is an American politician who perhaps more than anyone, like maybe Bill Clinton, maybe just under Bill Clinton, you could say was a passionate advocate for mass incarceration, which disproportionately impacted Black Americans, you know, which just sent millions of Black Americans to prison, destroyed these communities, destroyed families intentionally, you know, for very intentional reasons, like we were discussing. Drafted the crime bill. And then you see the Democratic Party, you see Joe Biden pretending that they're friends to the Black community or that they do in any way honor or respect MLK's message or his rhetoric or his spirit. It's so cynical. It's just fucking gross. It is fucking gross. Bill Clinton suspended his presidential campaign so he could return to Arkansas and oversee the execution of a mentally handicapped Black man. Yeah, but Hillary had hot sauce in her pocket, and it was basically the Bernie bros were being racist for not supporting Hillary, right? Something along those lines. But it's just, I mean, there's no greater example. You know, it's right in front of our eyes how absolutely correct Lenin was when he talked about this. Than to see Joe Biden, a proud supporter of American imperialism, a proud supporter of mass incarceration, the militarization of police departments.
We simply use the computer to mark up the
a proud
size
supporter
of the
FBI and the CIA and these intelligence communities. They put him in the LULAG. That's right. Thank you, Dimitri. You know, a proud supporter of all these things, pretending in any way that he honors or respects MLK's legacy. You know, it's just sickening. It's absolutely sickening. And the media does prop out these narratives, absolutely.
To the beloved community, to the sacred place, that sacred hour when justice rains down like waters and righteousness as a mighty stream.
Anyway, I can't listen to an entire 20 minutes of this sanctimonious bullshit, but I just wanted to take a look at that to point out that level of hypocrisy and contradiction.
To the King family.
I wanted to also talk about, we talked a little bit about nonviolence. While MLK also at the same time, while talking about his philosophy of nonviolence, recognizing where violence is coming from, even when he's discouraging it in his own movement, in his own community. I wanted to rile you up while I was away. That's right. It's great. I'm seeing more and more of those 24-month badges. Very exciting. It's very exciting for me to see those elite exclusive TRRS 24-month badges in the chat. So yeah, you had MLK though often talking about nonviolence as a philosophy, but also when it came to talking about violence in the black community was completely unapologetic in laying the blame where it belongs. Like this quote here, cries of black power and riots are not the causes of white resistance, they're the consequences of it. The same thing of like, why are you burning down your communities, you're burning down the Wendy's, you're burning down the you're smashing the bank windows, that's only helping the police, it's only helping the conservatives. It's only leading to this backlash, it leads to this reactionary backlash. No, it's the reactionary racist policies are causing the riots and the resistance in the first place, not the other way around. They're not the causes of white resistance. They are the consequences of it. The great majority of Americans are suspended. And this is from I believe it's from the I Have a Dream speech, which is the same people hold up as this example of MLK's philosophy, and again, completely whitewashing it. It says the great majority of Americans are suspended between these opposing attitudes. They're uneasy with injustice, but unwilling yet to pay a significant price to eradicate it. The persistence of racism in depth and the dawning awareness that Negro demands will necessitate structural changes in society have generated a new phase of white resistance in North and South. Based on the cruel judgment that Negroes have come far enough. Where are we at me just reading? It feels uncomfortable to read that word considering the way that language has evolved since that time. Where are we on that? Can I just read the words as they're on the screen? I feel a little weird about it, I must admit. There is a strong mood to bring the civil rights movement to a halt or reduce it to a crawl. Negro demands that yesterday evoked admiration and support today to many have become tiresome, unwarranted, and a disturbance to the enjoyment of life. Does any of this sound familiar? Right? Demands that yesterday evoked admiration and support today to many have become tiresome, unwarranted, and a disturbance to the enjoyment of life. Cries of black power and riots are not the causes of white resistance, they are the consequences of it. Talking about his support of reparations.
That America refused to, at the very same time that America refused to give the Negro any land, through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land-grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided county agents to further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they could mechanize their farms. Not only that, today, many of these people are receiving millions of dollars in federal subsidies not to farm, and they are the very people telling the black man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And this is what we are faced with, and this is the reality. Now, when we come to Washington, in this campaign, we are coming to get our check.
That's awesome. Hey, remember also in the early weeks of the Democratic primary in 2020, how like it to become like a gotcha in against Bernie Sanders, they were asking about reparations, and all of a sudden people in the Democratic Party had to pretend that they supported reparations for the first time in their fucking careers. And Bernie and others should support reparations. I agree with that. But it became this like gotcha. All of a sudden, like we were suggesting that the Kamala Harris or these other people cared about or were going to support reparations. And Bernie was getting these questions. Why don't you support that? But it's like for the first time in fucking history, we're talking about like that's a mainstream position in the Democratic Party. Fucking amazing. No, I haven't seen the Atlanta episode about reparations. He's a union man. That's right. Well, yeah, like we talked about, towards the end of his career, linking the struggle for social justice and racial justice towards the broader struggle for economic justice for working people. You know, that's when he became intolerable to the establishment. Excuse me. A lot of white leftists get freaked out over it. It's in the exact same way that they get freaked out over land back, over giving land back to indigenous people. Right? No. That alienates the racist white working class movements that we need to reach out to. That kind of talk. You know? Or people will, like, these disingenuous leftist types will point to the ways that like NGOs and these kind of liberal establishments have latched onto these social justice-y concepts and then frame the pursuit of social justice as supporting, the establishment or supporting the liberal establishment.
I would simply support reparations.
Same, Doc. Very much same. Thank you. 15 months of tier 2. Thank you, Doc, for all the support over the years now. The multiple years. Well, 1 year and a couple months. Thank you, Doc.
Time is that many of the people, I think the other thing that we must see at this time is that many of the people who supported us in Selma.
Reparations for Pell Grant recipients who start a business that operates for 3 years in disadvantaged communities. That's right, Sinchel. Easy. Piece of cake.
Birmingham were really outraged about the extremist behavior toward Negroes. But they were not at that moment, and they are not now, committed to genuine equality for Negroes. It's much easier to integrate a lunch counter than it is to guarantee an annual income, for instance, to get rid of poverty for Negroes and all poor people. It's much easier to integrate a bus than it is to make genuine integration a reality and quality education a reality in our schools. It's much easier to integrate even a public park than it is to get rid of slums. And I think we are in a new era, a new phase of the struggle, where we have moved from a struggle for decency, which characterized our struggle for 10 or 12 years, to a struggle for genuine equality. And this is where we're getting the resistance, because there was never any intention to go this far. People were reacting to Bull Connor and to Jim Clark rather than acting in good faith for the realization of genuine equality. I think the other thing...
These are the messages that we just don't hear. You know, in this fetishization of the "I have a dream" quote, in the way that liberals claim to uphold MLK's legacy, liberals like Joe Biden, who have actively worked against everything that MLK supported, spent his entire career actively working against every single thing that he supported. You know, these are all the kind of quotes that we don't hear as much about, which again is outlined in State and Revolution.
We read one day, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But if a man doesn't have a job or an income, he has neither life nor liberty and the possibility for the pursuit of happiness. He merely exists. The promises of the Great Society have been shot down on the battlefield of Vietnam,
Seriously,
making
Jay,
the poor, white and Negro, bear the heaviest burdens both at the front and at home. The other thing I want you to understand is this, that it didn't cost the nation 1 penny to integrate lunch counters. It didn't cost the nation 1 penny to guarantee the right to vote. But now we are dealing with issues that cannot be solved without the nation spending billions of dollars and undergoing a radical redistribution of economic power. All labor.
This is Ben Shapiro saying, this is not why we uphold MLK. Yeah, we know, Ben. We know. We know you uphold a completely false fantasyland version of MLK and ignore all the shit about social justice and economic justice. We know that.
Has dignity. Yes. But you're doing another thing. You are reminding not only Memphis,
We did watch the Vietnam speech, yeah.
but you are reminding the nation that it is a crime for people to live in this rich nation and receive starvation wages.
How do you live in the United States of America and see people just sleeping and dying on the street and think that that's a fair system? You know, it's truly sickening, isn't it? I just got one final thing that I wanted to send you off with. Little palate cleanser. Okay, little palate cleanser here.
Cena, I am so ready to kick the hell out of you right now.
This is what it means to be an ally, okay? This is what it means to be an ally. That's called being a true ally. That's one of my favorite things about any heel promo is the turn to the shut up to the crowd. I love a well-timed shut up in a heel promo is just one of my favorite things. This was a good day of discussion about this. I got a little fired up. I hope you folks enjoyed that one. Thank you for watching the stream today. I have to get going soon. Okay. Thank you for watching, friends. Thank you, Wild Mambo Queen, for joining the community. While the being inclusive and standing up to bigotry is heel behavior to many Americans. Yeah. I think maybe it might have been a little disingenuous on Edge's part there, but still, you know, I still enjoy it. Thank you, History Boff. Thank you, Dave Legend. Thank you for tuning in today, everybody. It was wonderful. It was a wonderful discussion. Can I not fucking raid? Oh my goodness. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna figure this out. I gotta log out. Sometimes I have to log out of Twitch and log back in. Don't ask me why. Don't ask me why I have to do this. Now I gotta put in my code. Don't ask me why I have to do this. Oh, you know what? I'll raid Left Flank Vets. Marcus from Left Flank Vets did mention today that on MLK Day, it is probably like not viewing Left Flank Vets stream and subscribing to that and subscribing to Marcus's Patreon.
To mark
It
up
is
the
racist.
size of the account.
It is racist to do so. Because I am a true ally, I'm going to be raiding our friend Marcus today. Thank you, Dimitri, for the 100 friend coin. Magnificent discussion on MLK and Howard, and how and why his message is whitewashed or confirmed to try to get Dr. Horn. I will. I'm going to try and get Horn. I'm going to get VJ back on the show. All kinds of great stuff coming up. Guests, all kinds of good stuff coming up on this season of TRRS. I will be back tomorrow, folks. Tomorrow noon, same time, same channel. I'm back on the grind. I am streaming every single fucking day again. And I'm happy to be here. Can't you tell? Can't you tell how happy I am about this? So I will be there tomorrow.
You can count on me. You're gonna have.
And look at that. Hail to the King 43. Thank you for the Prime sub right in under the wire. Thank you. Very much appreciate that Prime sub. Thank you. Join the Discord. If you're not in there already, join that Discord server. All right? Give my regards to Marcus. Thanks again, folks, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Take care.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.